Hi everyone, I'm Shaheen from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with UK-based James Stacey, who's Program Marketing Manager for the EMEA region at Red Hat, which is a global leader in enterprise open source solutions. Thanks so much for joining us, James.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just get into it. Let's start out, if you could introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a bit more about how what you do relates to content marketing.
Yeah, of course. I've been in marketing for 8 years, and my current role is as a demand generation marketer for Red Hat, as you mentioned. I create content to educate new prospects. That's my focus within Red Hat, and because we're very much focused on new businesses who don't currently work with us, it's the content is mainly around the challenges that those organizations face. I really love marketing. I think the essence of marketing is really storytelling, and content marketing is just the best way to tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you could also tell us a bit more about your background and how you got into marketing in the first place.
Yeah, so when I went to university, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I studied business studies, and because that just covered all bases, and marketing was something that stuck out at that point. But I was very numbers orientated, and so when I left university, I got a job as an analyst. So I worked in the technology industry, I worked in the music industry, and then I got a job as an analyst at a small publisher in London, and they had a number of different websites and job boards and editorial sites, and wanted to have someone who dug into the numbers and could understand how they could generate more revenue through the businesses that they had. And so I obviously analysed what people did on the websites, how they interacted with the marketing, where they engaged, which drove the most growth and the most revenue for the business. And then, of course, once I completed my reporting, they asked me if I could recommend changes and implement those changes into the business. And I didn't really know at the time, but it essentially was marketing that I was implementing. So how to generate better emails to increase the engagement there, investing in sort of PPC and just at a really low level and target the exact audience that they wanted that would generate that revenue. And it was just a real thrill to put something into practice. And then, as I said, I'm a numbers guy. So when you put those marketing practices in, and then you see the numbers come up and the revenue go up for a business, and know that you actually accomplished all of it, that was a real thrill. And then from then on, that was it. Marketing was my true course. So I do sort of retain a lot of the numbers and the analytical side, and always like to report on what we're doing. But yeah, the actual marketing is the real driver for me now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you worked for a publisher and kind of moved into marketing for a brand or for a company, because they say, like, everyone is becoming a publisher now. So I was curious, like, has your experience, like, what were the differences and similarity, like working for an actual publishing company versus now working for a brand that is putting out publications?
I think the really interesting thing is that there is always, I don't want to say friction, because I feel like everyone in a business should be going in the same direction, but there can be a friction between the people who are writing content and the people who are actually managing it and aligning it with a strategy, because obviously the person writing it has got everyone's got the audience in mind, but the person writing content really understands what they want to say and how they want to say it, and then sometimes other people can then shoehorn that into something that doesn't quite fit, or vice versa. Maybe the person writing the content doesn't really understand how it's going to be taken to market. But in a publisher, that is so much more polarized, because you've got essentially the sales teams who are trying to get advertising revenue into those businesses, and so the customers have so much strength in what what is going to be written and what should be produced. And then you've obviously got the editorial teams who are very, very passionate about what they're writing. And so there's a real pushback either way all of the time, and it's always about understanding how you can find that middle ground. And so a lot of that I still sort of implement now. Sort of how can we win from all angles? How can the content be really engaging and relevant, but also how can that content really hit the goals and targets for the audience and for the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. But it's true, at a publication, you've got like the kind of competing interests of advertisers versus readers. Whereas like, I guess writing for a brand, your interests are more aligned, no? Like everyone's working to reach the customers.
Yeah, but sometimes you do have those conversations. So at a huge organization like Red Hat, you've got product marketers who they evangelize the products and the specific features of that particular product. But if you spoke to any content writer at Red Hat and say, oh, can you write a blog about this particular feature on this particular product and how cool and fun it is, they'd roll their eyes and be like, well, I don't know how engaging I can make that. And for a particular audience, of course that is. But when you're speaking to a customer, all they want to know is, okay, I'm facing this challenge. Maybe I've got too much data and it's causing me issues in creating applications and taking them to market, or the infrastructure I have that manages all that data. And all they want to hear is, oh, we can help you manage all that data, streamline your system, and take some of the mundane routine tasks out of your day. And obviously the product marketer, yeah, they understand that's what this particular feature fixes, but it's the feature that excites them and that they want to get out there. So I think no matter the business you're in, everyone's got their own angle of what they want to talk about. And my role, because I'm more of a coordinator than a content writer, is to make sure that everyone's happy. So to make sure that everyone sees the value of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and ultimately to keep the customer at the center of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. So maybe, well, I was going to ask you next to tell us a bit more about your role. So you touched on it already, but could you tell us also just a bit more about what Red Hat does and what your responsibilities are there?
Yeah, so like most people and probably a majority of your listeners, Red Hat is relatively obscure unless you're in the industry. Red Hat focuses on what we call open source code, and so about 20 years ago, all businesses were writing their own proprietary code. If you wanted a solution, you bought it from Microsoft. You were tied into a contract, and they had developers that were building those products, and you would obviously charge the amount of cost that it would take for all of those developers and everyone within the business to create the solution. A lot of developers are very passionate about what they do, and so they're sprouted communities of these developers creating even better tools than and centered around what we call the Linux distribution, which is an operating system of sorts. So the developers were creating fantastic code, and because of the communities that developed this, no company could monetize the business. And so about 20 years ago, there was products and solutions that were being built that were better than the likes of Microsoft, the Amazon of their time, but no one could monetize it. And so the people that started Red Hat saw an opportunity, because they said, well, people agree that this is the best code. People aren't monetizing it, so there's no business model. So even the biggest companies in the world are using it, but no one's looking to monetize it. The first business who manages to monetize this is going to have the best code in the world and no competitors. And so it's a really interesting story, and I've been brought in, and all my colleagues are fantastic, and so passionate, and so it's strange going from not knowing a business to joining it and finding out how strong the culture is and strong sort of appeal to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm continually learning about our products, our portfolio, and sort of hopefully sort of taking the story to the next level.
Okay. Well, I have like so many questions I could ask you about about open source and how all that works. Although I guess that's a topic for another day. but maybe you could just tell us a bit more though about like kind of your day to day. Like, what's your typical day like?
So obviously, recording this during the pandemic, I'm working from home, so the level of meetings has gone through the roof. So simple stakeholder management doesn't become so simple. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm speaking to product marketing managers, understanding sort of the product solutions and portfolio, and how they're changing and how that reflects to the customers. I'm talking to marketers in the field who ultimately have the conversations on the ground in their own regions. I'm speaking with sort of internal marketing account managers, agencies who we're working with to create good quality content, and then reporting and data teams to understand what we've got in the market, how it's working, and how it can be better optimized. So yeah, I'm forever jumping from one Zoom call into another Zoom call, and hopefully getting some work done in between as well.
Nice. So a lot of coordination, it sounds like. I was curious, maybe this is a silly question, but the word marketing manager, like what's the word program mean in there?
No, I mean, before I joined Red Hat, actually, that was one of my first questions. So because Red Hat is so large, that we don't really have any generalist marketing managers. Everyone is assigned to what we call a program. So maybe you work in a particular vertical, so insurance or oil and gas, and so your programs, all your marketing efforts will be aligned to that vertical. My program is what we call is mainly acquisition marketing. So customers who aren't yet customers, so essentially prospects, and companies who spend very, very little with Red Hat, and there's a huge opportunity to grow. So these people may not know too much about open source. It's very much we're holding their hands and taking them through the education and awareness journey. And also where Red Hat already support 95% of the top 500 biggest organizations in the world. That's our bread and butter. But if we're looking to grow, we need to be speaking to the smaller bit. And when I say smaller businesses, it's like 1,000 to 5,000 employees. If you're working at that business, you don't think it's small. So we've got to be very careful to say you're a bit smaller and your challenges are different. But Red Hat is still a fantastic place for you to work. And so yes, my program, as it were, is focusing on acquisition marketing for Red Hat.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. So program is kind of an internal term used to describe like different areas of the business.
That's correct.
I see. Cool. Well, so going to some specifics of content marketing, could you just share like an example of a campaign or a piece of content that has worked really well for you?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, I work at the top of the funnel. So I'm really focused on net new customers for Red Hat. So if anyone doesn't understand the term of the funnel, the top of the funnel is where people don't really understand the business, and you're directing them down the funnel to educate, give them more awareness about the products, take them through solution consideration, and eventually at the bottom of the funnel they become a customer. So that's a sort of content journey that they would follow. And so because we're one of the first marketing teams that those people will engage with as a prospect, we really want to focus on the challenges that they have as an organization, rather than try and sell the solutions that we have without really giving the context. So we recently created an ebook, which doesn't really go into detail about anything, but it gives a broad overview of all the areas within a business that can be positively affected by working with Red Hat. So whether it's your security, whether it's your infrastructure, the way you manage data, and it can also be read by anyone within the business. So it could be maybe a procurement team who have been passed this contract and say, oh, we really want to work with Red Hat, but the procurement team obviously needs to understand why Red Hat is a good solution and why the IT team wants to spend a significant amount of money with Red Hat. And so I think we can always get too caught up in how good our products are and not really sell why we're doing it. And so, yeah, the recent ebook we've created is breaking new ground for Red Hat, and we've seen some really good results and are looking to build out more content off the back of it. So we've got a webinar and blog series coming out in the next couple of quarters, and hopefully they're going to do as equally as well.
And what do you think was unique about that ebook that made it like especially resonate or work well?
I think the title was "Open Your Possibilities with Red Hat," and that I think that worked quite well because when people are reading it's quite an engaging title, and it's really it's open for anyone. So people were quite curious, and then it was just so easily digestible. You didn't go into it thinking, oh, I hope I have enough IT knowledge and understanding around open source to be able to read this and comprehend it. So it was just a really nice. Red Hat is here to hold your hand, no matter what your understanding is with open source, what your understanding is with Red Hat, and no matter what your infrastructure, what current products you have within your business that maybe you want to get rid of or you want to keep and manage better. It was just really, really simple. And sometimes we can get too technical and forget how easy it is just to say things simply.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and it sounds like it was like something really practical and to the point and answered people's questions. And it's like, yeah, sometimes that's that's the best. Depending on, like, it sounds like you're reaching people at a point when they want to know more, right? This is for that part of the funnel. So it's like clarifying everything and putting that all in one place.
Yeah, and then channeling them depending on what their business challenge is. So if this part of the ebook really spoke to you, then this is the next logical step for you to go. And so yeah, our program feeds the other program. So when I talked about the top of the funnel, if they engage with the stuff that we do, we hopefully take enough data and enough information about what that particular customer wants and needs, and then pass it to the relevant team at the next stage in the funnel to continue their journey and nurture.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So could you tell us a bit more about like who your target audience is and like what's your approach in reaching them, as well as like what's important to keep in mind when reaching out to this kind of audience?
Yes, of course. So we obviously target our typical sort of IT operations, IT managers, administrators. That is the core of our business. But we also speak to like line of business heads, so CMOs, CIOs, COOs, or heads of those departments. Or it could be someone like procurement who wants a better understanding of what Red Hat does and why their business is engaging with us. So we make sure that anyone with any level of sort of technical information can feel serviced by our content, but we obviously make sure that depending on their experience and level of understanding, that we're giving them the right next step after they engage with us as well.
Okay. And yeah, so what's important to keep in mind when it comes to content marketing in your industry and reaching this kind of audience?
Yeah, I think I know I've touched on it before, but talking about the challenges rather than actually the technical solutions. And so when you're talking to a C-suite, for example, they're not in the day-to-day nuts and bolts. They just know that if their business is going to be a success and their customers are going to be happy, they need to service them fast, reliable. They can't have any downtime in their service. So you speak to those challenges. And then if you're IT ops or someone within the IT department, you know that you know what your day-to-day looks like. You know where your pinch points are, your challenges are as a business, and so our content needs to speak to those as well. And so it's really understanding that, yes, okay, maybe you're talking to a manufacturing company, but that doesn't mean to say all of your content needs to focus on, okay, this is how a good manufacturing company works, and this is how we can help you. It's saying, okay, you're the COO of the manufacturing company, and this is your challenge, and this is why Red Hat is here for you. You're the IT manager of this IT manufacturing company, and then this is your challenge, and this is how Red Hat can help you too. So just because two people in the same organization, it doesn't mean that they should be spoken to the same way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when it comes to tone of voice, how would you describe your approach?
So we've got a really strong brand because we developed out of the open source community, and we still work so closely with them, and also because our competitors are also our partners. We're in a really, really strange place, and our dynamic is in a sort of juxtaposition to any normal business. And so for us, the strength of our brand is to remain open and honest, and we really strive to be the sort of helping hand in open source. It's still relatively new for so many businesses, and so we can't have a level of expectation about anyone we speak to, and so yeah, it's something that is our brand team has an incredibly strong position within the business, and if the brand team even suggests that what you're doing isn't aligned to Red Hat, then your campaign isn't going to go anywhere. So we have to be really careful with our tone of voice, and it's something that's really, really close to every campaign that we deliver.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds super interesting approach. And then, well, I wanted to ask you, what do you think some companies get wrong when it comes to content marketing?
I think I work in B2B and have done for some time, and one of the challenges I've always had is, particularly when you're working with people in generating demand, their main KPI is the number of leads that they're generating. So the number of email addresses that they're adding to the database, and so that if they have a really, really good year, it's because it's mainly, obviously it's revenue and measuring that ROI, but essentially a lot of times it is the number of email addresses they've got into the database. And so sometimes people can be blindsided by that, and every single campaign, every single piece of content, everything has to lead towards getting someone to give their email address. But then they forget that when they get home and they open their emails and they're unsubscribing from emails, or someone's trying to capture their data, that they're saying no, or they're not giving away their own personal data for just a piece of content. And I think we have to take some of that into our business lives as well. I'm really keen to make sure that we're creating content that is engaging, that doesn't sit behind a form, that people don't have to say, this is my name, this is my mobile number, this is my email address, this is the business I work in and the number of employees it has and the revenue that our business has. And once I've given you all this information, then I'd like to read an infographic or something that's really light and doesn't warrant that level of information. So from a B2B standpoint, that's the challenge that I come up against sometimes. And then the other thing is just not having the customer at the center of what you're doing, because if you're looking at content or campaigns in their own, then they might have a really good user journey, but you've got to think about your customer journey as part of the whole organization. So a customer might come in from one campaign, another team within the business might be doing another campaign. And so whilst if you look at your 3 emails and say, oh yeah, if someone received that email and then that email and then that email, it all makes sense. But how does that look like to the customer who is engaging with multiple different touch points? They might be on social media, email, they might be coming through paid media or organic channels or visiting your website. Are all those experiences tied together? Is there a coherent message across all of that marketing? And when you're in a company the size of Red Hat, that is very, very difficult. And that is why I'm in so many meetings all of the time, making sure we're managing those stakeholders, because yeah, we really need to make sure we're always customer centric, and the customer sits at everything in the middle of everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those 2 points go hand in hand, I think. On the first point, though, what you're saying is not that you shouldn't ask for the data, because obviously that's your goal, but that you need to make sure that like what you're offering in exchange for that is like worth it for the person. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, the ebook that we produced last year, we're going to be creating blogs and webinars around that content, and we're going to have really nice, interesting interviews with people within Red Hat, with customers, possibly with open source community members. And what that will give us is really rich content that is very engaging, that we don't ask for people to give us their contact details to watch or read, but we hope that it's engaging and interesting enough to say, if you think this is right for you, then this ebook is definitely right for you, and please give us your details to read the ebook, because essentially the more you understand this ebook, the more sort of value you can bring to your own business. And it would be really easy to wuss out and put the webinars behind another form because we think the webinars are good, or the blogs are so good we put a form behind them, and then we're saying, okay, we're definitely going to get more contacts, but how good is that customer journey? How many customers will want to, or prospects will want to put their details into a number of different forms to reach content that is just a bit fun and lighthearted, and isn't going to make a huge difference to their day. So it's that's hopefully what we're going to bring.
I see. So basically, yeah, you need some ungated content to kind of gain their trust, and then only put like the super high value stuff like behind the gate. Yeah.
And you've really got to trust that the content you're delivering is good, and because we could have people watching the webinar who then don't download the ebook, and yes, in that respect, if we had gated the webinar, then we might have got their details, but how good are details of someone who watched the webinar, didn't really engage with it or like it, and then decided to leave the site? Is that good? Is that a good journey? Is that someone you want in the database, or someone who watched something organically, then clicked the ebook to find out more, gave us their details, and has touched 3 or 4 different pieces of content before entering the database, and has a much better understanding of what Red Hat does?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point. Interesting to think about. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you about, what skills you think are most important for marketers these days.
So I think marketers really need to understand a bit of everything. They need to understand the products that they're talking about, the audience and the pain points that they have, all of the different marketing channels. Attribution and data is so much more important now than it used to be within marketing. And so because you need such a broad understanding of so many different parts of the business, I think that's why we're seeing the rise of the CMO, and also the number of marketers who are actually entering CEO positions within businesses. And I can only see that growing, because marketers need to have the pulse of their internal business, the businesses they speak to, and the wider industry. And all of those challenges are also what a CEO is thinking about on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting trend. And then also, just what advice would you give to someone starting out now in marketing?
I like that question. Um, so yeah, if I had to think about what I would be telling myself 8 years ago when I started, um, it would be really that marketing is a broad field, and you can have so many different personality types and interests just within marketing. So if you're artistic, then there's creative routes that you can go down within marketing. If you're numbers driven, then programmatic is a growing field within marketing, that is like if I started again now, I'd definitely be going down the programmatic route because of my interests, and there's always going to be a future there. If you're process driven, marketing operations is really interesting. Marketing is getting more complex by the day. Marketing's getting pulled into sales, marketing's getting pulled into all the martech stack, so the technology within marketing, and but also at the same time, there's nothing wrong with being a generalist. So I spent years at marketing agencies, and so I was an account manager there. I got to see lots of different companies with lots of different challenges, and I got to see campaigns that went really well. I got to see campaigns that went really badly, and so I would also implore anyone that is thinking about marketing, or even if you're in it and looking for a change, and haven't tried agency side for a while, at least a year, because you will see so many different ways of working within one marketing agency, than you ever will within a business. Because in a business, you only see the campaigns that you're running in that particular business, and obviously you can only run a certain number of campaigns in a year. But when you're at an agency, you'll see your own accounts, you'll see case studies of other accounts within the business, you'll see what works, what doesn't. You'll work with brilliant people who sort of work across a number of different parts of marketing, and it's a great experience, and I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without my time at agencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So many companies ask for like previous agency experience, so it makes sense also from that perspective as well. It's something definitely valued by employers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so we're getting to the last section of the interview. So we don't have a ton of time for recommendations, but I just wanted to ask you for a few of your tips for other marketers. Well, first of all, any resources for staying up to date on marketing trends, or also, yeah, any online community publication, podcast, things like that.
So I'm within B2B marketing, and therefore I read the B2B marketing magazine, well, the online version. I try to attend webinars where I can. I find it's easier to stay on top of the newest changes to the market in webinar form, because if you're reading someone's website, it's just whatever's interesting that day. But the webinars, there's normally case studies and customers behind those findings. I also try and read up about my industry. So I'd recommend anyone, whether you're agency or within a business, read the sort of investor updates. You should know the share price of the company you work for, and understand the industry that you're in and the products that you serve, and the customers. If you're in a particular vertical, like, I don't know, maybe you service oil and gas, you should know all about the industry, your competitors, and how the share price of your biggest competitors are at any one time. I think if you really delve into where you are and your understanding of the market, you will be able to serve the people that engage with your marketing so much better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great tip. And well, what's a favorite software tool or app right now?
This is going to be really boring, but I live in Google Drive, and having been at sort of Microsoft Office companies in the past, I just absolutely live in Google Drive, and it's such an easy place to be. And So yeah, I'm going to be pretty middle of the road and say Google Drive.
Okay, totally agree with you on that one. Well, you have a productivity hack to share?
So I'm very process driven. I have big to-do lists. Obviously, you've got all of the productivity tools like Monday.com, Asana, Trello, but if you're ever working with people and collaborating, like it just takes one person not to be updating those tools for it all to fall to bits. So for me, I plan my whole week on a Monday, and that really helps me understand the big rocks. What are the biggest things that I need to get done that week, and it also gives me direction. So every day I'm waking up and I know exactly what I've got to do that day. I don't like to be responsive. I don't like for emails to change the direction of my day. I like to have that control at any one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we all strive for, I think. It's most difficult.
Yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. But do you have a favorite marketing or business book?
So, oh, I do like to read, and I do like to challenge myself. I like to. I've recently finished Shoe Dog, which is the sort of biography of the guy that started Nike, and that was really interesting actually, and nice to see that the challenges of yesteryear are still the challenges of today, albeit with different tools at our disposal. And yeah, I've mentioned earlier sort of how I stay up to date with industry trends, but most of my reading sort of in the evening and outside of work. So I like to read stuff that's entertaining, but also I might be able to learn a bit from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, makes sense. And who's a professional role model or a source of inspiration?
So I've had a couple of role models from businesses I've worked at, and so I guess that'd be more of a mentor. I'm really guilty if I'm ever scrolling through LinkedIn and there's something of Simon Sinek, I can't help but stop and watch it, even if I've watched it before. He just makes the overly complicated sound simple, and there's no way you can't watch one of his videos be inspired and not be inspired to actually make a change in your own day to day. So yeah, that's probably pretty middle of the road. Yeah, he's a Google Drive of industry speakers,
inspiration. Yeah, no, but no, but it's a great one. No. And then, well, any other recommendations you have, just in terms of podcasts, online communities, or other things like that?
So I recently joined another online community called Finite, which is B2B focused. So it's got a Slack channel, which is really interesting to see what my equivalents in all different businesses are doing. And so that's a really nice community to be a part of. Podcasts, I quite like sort of podcasts that help me develop as a person, because I think the better person I am, the better marketer I'll be, and the better I'll be able to contribute to my business. So Dr. Rangan Chatterjee has a podcast called, I think it's Live Better, Do More. I've probably butchered that.
Well, okay, so we reached the end of the interview, but I just wanted to give you the chance for any final parting advice or final takeaways.
Oh no, I've really enjoyed I've really enjoyed today's talk, and sometimes you work so often doing the day to day that just weeks go past and you don't really know sort of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So it's been really nice to actually have some time to reflect, and maybe I'll schedule some time with some of my colleagues and we'll have just an open conversation about what we've done over the last 6 months. Because I hope that some of my colleagues would get just as much enjoyment out of reflecting like we have just now. So yeah, thank you so much for the invitation, Shaheen, and yeah, I look forward to watching and listening to more of your podcasts to come.
Yeah, thank you.
And joining the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Hope to see you there on the Facebook group. And yeah, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. It was great speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on content marketing in Europe, check out bearcontent.com/mix and keep tuning into the podcast for more interviews with content experts. See you next time. Bye.